How are you keeping up with the rapidly evolving landscape of generative AI in marketing or in your business? With its potential to revolutionize content creation, personalization, and campaign efficiency, many marketers are left wondering how to harness its power effectively. Join us today for Strategy Talks as we explore the practical strategies and applications of generative AI that can transform your marketing efforts and drive real results. If you're ready, so am I. I'll be right back.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Doreen Morin Van Dam.
Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, and it's another episode of Strategy Talks. We're just 2 weeks into this season 4, and I've invited a bunch of strategic thinkers to come join me. If you're here live with us, let us know in the comments where you're joining us from, whether you see us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. And if you're here for the replay, let us know if you have any questions. Both my guests and myself can go answer those afterwards. And last but not least, always want to do a shout out to those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. Now, without much further ado, I'm going to bring onto the screen with me my friend Christopher Penn. How are you today, Chris?
I am well. How about yourself?
I am great. We were just talking about being cold in Boston and Vermont. And for those of you who are anywhere else in the world, yes, we have snow on the ground. And yes, it is cold. But it's all good. It's all good. So, Chris, we're going to talk about generative AI strategies. But there's a lot of people out there who don't know differences between like a language model and automation and in some of these terms. So can you, for somebody, say they're a small business owner and they might be ready to hire a marketer and they might not even know what questions to ask about AI. Can you explain to us what generative AI is? What is that definition? And somebody watching who might have heard this term might go like, aha.
Sure. So generative AI is a relatively new family of tools. And some of them are about a decade old. Most of them are about 7, 8 years old now, that allow you to perform mostly language-based tasks, such as summarization, extraction, rewriting, classification, question answering, synthesis, and of course, making stuff. Yeah. It can be in any kind of language. So we're talking marketing copy, business copy. We're talking about strategy documents, doing SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces, all the classics, right? We're talking about writing code. They can write software incredibly well. And for a small business or an entrepreneur who wants to dramatically accelerate the growth of their business, if they have good requirements gathering and they have the ability to articulate what they want, these tools can speed that up incredibly by doing things like writing actual code, creating apps. In my personal newsletter this past weekend, I showed people, here's just the prompt you need to have it generate a very simple app. We talk to these tools with what's called prompting, which is just a fancy way of saying giving detailed instructions. And there are certain little gimmicks and tricks and things that work well with this. But the base is, think of these things like the world's smartest, most forgetful interns. And you delegate tasks to them as you would delegate to an intern. So you would never say to an intern, oh, write me a SWOT analysis of this competitor, right? That would be a disaster. Instead, you would say, intern, here's our company. Here's what we know about our company. Here's the competitor we're going after. Here's what we do. Here's what we sell. Here's the background of the market. Here's what a SWOT analysis is. Now, intern, give me a SWOT analysis with all this information. And of course, a very smart intern would be able to do that. And the same thing is true of generative AI.
So that's really, really helpful to understand a little bit more. So if we're talking to marketers, if you're out there today and you're marketing and you're working with a business, a corporation, small business, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter, right? You're creating this content for them. One of the things that I want to talk to you today about, Chris, is how do you have a conversation about whether you use generative AI in your business? If you're a freelancer, of course, you have your own business. And so you might have some rules around AI, right? But as a small business that you work with, if they don't have any knowledge about how to use AI safely, what not to do, what to do, how can a marketer have that conversation with a small business, or how can a small business prepare themselves to ask the right questions when they're interviewing a new member for their team, whether that's in marketing or HR or, like you said, a business consultant? Transparency. Let's talk about transparency, the language. Like, how do we have that conversation, and what are some important things that we have to talk about before we can start working together?
So one of the fundamental things you have to establish is the importance of copyright in what you're doing.
Okay.
It is generally accepted in most places on the planet. There are a few exceptions, but in most places on the planet, purely machine generated content is ineligible for copyright. So you go to ChatGPT and say, write me a blog post about B2C marketing strategies for pool companies in 2025.
Yeah.
What it spits out is not copyrightable. And so if you are a business and you're going to be using this content and you want to be able to withstand a challenge in court for copyright, you cannot use AI for that, like that.
Right.
What you because that is a generated work by a non-human. And again, in most places on earth, the law is that non-human created works are ineligible for copyright. Only humans can hold copyright. You can use it to do ideation and brainstorming and refining and grammar editing and all those other things, as long as the vast majority of what is the final product was in some way generated by a human or has a lineage that can be traced and documented. So an example of that is I take my phone and I record the 30-minute voice memo to be just rambling on, and then I put that into a tool like Google Gemini or ChatGPT and say, clean this up, make it grammatically sensible and stuff like that. I can show a chain of evidence from my original human-generated foaming at the mouth to the final product and say, here's how I did this. That's consideration number one. Consideration number two is what is in your contracts. And big warning lights. I am not a lawyer. I cannot give legal advice. Please seek a lawyer in your jurisdiction for legal advice specific to your situation. You can tell I've said that a lot. If your contracts specify assignment of copyright, as a work for hire, by definition, you cannot assign copyright to a work that's not copyrightable. So if you are handing out generative AI outputs to a client and the client thinks that they're getting copyrights assigned and it's not copyrightable, you are in breach of contract, and which is obviously very bad. The third thing is, it's always a good idea, especially if you're going to do business in places like the EU, which has the EU AI Act, which passed in 2024. Two of the provisions that matter most for businesses that will interact in any way with the EU would be documenting the use of AI and disclosing the use of AI. When you're working with clients, it is a general best practice to say, here's how we use AI with this account, right? Here's what we do. So like when Trust Insights works with our clients, we tell people, here's exactly how we're using AI. For example, that lovely end of month summary that you get of all the things we did, we took an inbox, stuffed it into a secure AI and said, summarize what we did for this month, because it's a waste of time for a human being to do that. And our clients are like, this is great. We love this. We love that we get this. And we don't care who writes it because we just need it to be able to show our stakeholders, here's what we're paying for. So talking through with your client, where are you comfortable with us using AI? Where are you not? For almost all internal communications, like with a client, AI is totally fine as long as the client's like, yeah, I understand what you're doing. I understand why you're doing it. I understand that I get more of your billable time for things that actually matter. And just
That's
knowing
actually-
what the boundaries
That's
are.
actually a really great point. I love that. So here we go, guys. That's actually for those of us who are freelancing or that working on project or working on, like I have a 10-hour, a week project with this client. If you can use most of that time to actually do the work that matters and use an AI to, generate reports and summarize things, that's a really smart use of work. But I love that you said, the communication with a client is to happen. Now, some of us have been working with clients for a lot of years. I have a client who've been with for 8 years. So the conversation has shifted to, hey, we need to have a conversation about AI. I'm not using it for images, but I might be using it for rewriting some blog articles or getting ideas for blogs. So we need to have that conversation. And I love that you said that. And then, of course, those of us who work in an international setting, the EU AI Act, if you work with clients in Europe and you're in the US, you obviously need to know about this. So these are some great factors to think about. Do you recommend, I know you're not a lawyer, do you recommend putting some wording about AI in your contracts moving forward?
I absolutely think that's essential. You should know what the ground rules are. You should specify what the ground rules are. Another aspect that is really important is data privacy. There are some AI tools, for example, the web service and the app for DeepSeek, which is the new Chinese model. And I want to be very clear. There's a difference between the model and the app and the consumer interface. The consumer interface and the app, they are recording all your data. They're going to use all your data. Anything you give it, they're going to use. They're going to train models on it. A human being is going to read it. They tell you this in the privacy policy. So if you actually bother to read the privacy policy, you would know, yeah, your data is being used. The model is safe to use because you can download it and run it on your own hardware. But this is true of a lot of AI tools. The golden rule is this: if you ain't paying, your data is what you're paying with. So if you are not paying for AI tools, if you're using them for free, guess what? Your data is being used to train models, and your data is probably being seen by humans. So if you're putting in confidential information, that's a big no-no. So an important part for companies and for agencies is read the privacy policies. And if you don't want to read them, use a generative AI tool to read them for you and say, how private is my data, right?
I love
because you need to know.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And actually is a great segment into data. There's a couple of people here. I just want to shout out to Serenity, who's here, and Hank is here. We're all learning together. If you have questions, put them in the comments. Definitely want to ask Chris any questions you have. But let's talk a little bit more about data. And I love that you said about the model. So if you have, I'm just trying to learn too. So if you have a model and you put data in, if you are in a paid tool, your model, it's private. I mean,
let's clarify some terms here. Yeah. A model is AI software written by AI for AI's use. So you will see this. If you go into OpenAI's ChatGPT's interface, there's a little thing, the little drop down top. It's like, choose your model, and there's 6 unhelpful options. Like, I don't know what any of these things do. A model is essentially the AI software that AI uses. So, and there are 1.5 million different models that you can choose these days. So there's, and AI companies in general are very, very bad about naming these things. So they name them cryptic things like Gemini 2 Flash Thinking or O3 Mini High. Those are models. In many cases, the vast majority of the models that exist are actually things you can download and run on your computer if your computer is powerful enough. For example, the French company Mistral just released their version 3 of their small model, and you can download this. And if you have the right software on your computer, you can unplug the internet, turn off your Wi-Fi, and use generative AI right on your computer. So that's a model. A model sits inside of an interface. It's kind of like the engine, and they have the rest of the car. The rest of the car is ChatGPT or Google's Gemini web interface or whatever. And those things are typically have, those are the things that can track and ingest data, right? The model is nothing more than a database. Think of it almost like a big CSV file, right?
Okay.
A database is not going to be, listening to you. A database just spits things out. It's the rest of the car that you have to worry about. And so that's where the privacy stuff can come into play. If you're using the free version of ChatGPT, you have to toggle a setting to say, don't use my data, right? If you're using Google's Gemini in the free version, you can't turn it off. Like Google's like, yeah, we're going to take all that data, bring it on in, back up the truck, pour your data in. And so those are the considerations. This is one of the reasons why we tell people, if you're working with sensitive data, you want to use a model on your local computer or on your company's hardware internally, because then, like I said, you can unplug the internet and it'll work. When Llama 3 came out and when DeepSeek came out, these are very, very powerful models that require a lot of horsepower. But that in secure government facilities around the world, someone has loaded these onto an air-gapped server in the basement, behind like concrete barriers and stuff, so that they can use generative AI on their most sensitive data and know that no data is ever leaving the system.
That is a great way to explain it. And Chris, what kind of computer does somebody need to run even that small one that you were just talking about? You're keep saying powerful computer. What kind of computer, for example, do you have, or do you recommend if somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I want to do this. I want to, I'm an agency. I want to be able to have these models. I want to be able to have everything private. I need to run stuff on my own computer. What should they look for to invest in? Is that what they have and get an external drive? Is that like powerful motor? Like, let's talk hardware.
So the rule of the general rule of thumb is this: if you can play a AAA title video game like Call of Duty at full resolution, on full settings on your computer, you can run AI models, because all AI models use the GPU, the graphics processing unit, and most office computers don't even have one, because laptops for offices, like, yeah, you're using a spreadsheet, you don't need a GPU to use a spreadsheet. I personally use a MacBook Pro M4 Max with as much memory as we could buy. So because Apple computers are unique, they have the ability to share memory between their GPU and the regular computer. So I bought the 128 gigabyte version of the computer, which was like $6,000. But I can run models up to like 128 billion parameter models, which we can talk about the technical side another time. Here's the bottom line: if you're buying a Mac, buy as much memory as you possibly can. If you're buying a Windows machine, buy a machine that has the biggest graphics card that you can afford. And they are understandably very, very expensive. What's coming up soon are dedicated compute appliances that are affordable. So NVIDIA at CES this year just announced the Project Digits, which is a desktop computer. It's like a little cube for $3,000 that will have the ability to run very, small to mid-sized models very capably. And you could have it with the right software be sort of like your small office model that you could run and maybe share among 3 or 4 or 5 people.
I love that. That's actually was going to be my next question. What's coming up next? Because we all want this. We all need this. We want to use this. We want to be efficient in our businesses, whether we're a marketer or whether we're in HR or we're, a business consultant or we're running a SaaS company, right? We all want to be able to expand, grow, and growth seems to me directly tied to being more efficient with some of this, using AI for good. So I love that. We'll have to look to, next time we upgrade, if you're watching, if you're listening, upgrade a computer, make sure that you either have that graphic card or the highest memory. I have a MacBook Pro too, but I don't think mine was 6,000. So I probably don't have the highest thing that I need. But this is such great information, because in order for us to even play with some of this stuff, we have to be able to protect ourselves and our clients, right? If we're freelancers, if we're marketers with agencies, we need to protect ourselves and our clients. So having this knowledge that you're giving us, Chris, is really, really important. And I think, that's why I'm so glad you're here today. So talking about what's coming besides, a special cube, what else do you see coming? I know you have lots of speaking engagement. You're kind of explaining to people what's happening now, but I'm sure you're looking to the future too. What do you see? The growth is rapid, even from last year to now. I just can't believe the different conversations I'm having this year on Strategy Talks compared to last year about AI and even, 2023. It's vastly different. What do we need to look for? What do you see coming? And are there any traps for us out there that you can be like, watch out for this? I'd love to know.
Oh, well, the traps are easy to spot. It is people trying to lock you into different services. So there are a gazillion and a half point solutions for AI, the AI enabled software solutions. 90% of what these one trick pony companies do, you can do yourself. You don't have to spend $14.99 or $99.99 a month or whatever on these one trick ponies to do exactly those things. If you are willing to invest the time to do some studying as to how these things work. The big change in the last year has been the evolution of these reasoning models. So this is OpenAI's O1. This is DeepSeek R1. This is Google Gemini 2 Flash Thinking. What they do is they do a lot of their own internal conversation. They're like having a pre-meeting meeting before the meeting. If you think of them like a cadre of interns, and they can figure out things in a much more intelligent way than previous versions of these models do. Now, for small business owners, this is really important because one of the things people do most wrong with AI is they think it's a generative tool. And understand that's the name. Generation's the thing you should do least with it. It's boring, and most people are not skilled enough to write good prompts to keep it from being boring. What they're phenomenal at is review. So because AI models have been trained on so much text, you can say, here's a prompt. I want to review this contract. Here are the 5 things that are deal killers for me in a contract. Review this contract, score it, and tell me if this contract is something I should sign or redline, right? That's a simple one that will save you a ton of money, because you may sign things like, for example, an indemnification clause. If you don't know what that means and you sign a contract, you may have said, I accept all the liability for anything that goes wrong, right? That's a really bad thing to do. When it comes to strategy itself, models are trained on huge amounts of text. So they have the ability to do what we can't. Humans are focus creatures, but we are biologically focused creatures. We focus in on something, and we have peripheral vision, but our very biology makes us a focus creature. Models are the opposite. They have trouble focusing, and you've probably seen that if you try to generate an image, you're like, that is not what I asked for, right? What they are phenomenal at is seeing the big picture. So you can take your phone, right? Turn on the voice memo app and say, here's what my marketing plans are for 2025. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be trying this thing. My goal is this. I want to get this level of growth. Transcribe it with the AI tool of your choice, and then hand it to a reasoning model. Say, here's my strategy. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what I've got wrong. Tell me what I could be doing better. Even something as simple as, if, for example, Google Gemini has the ability to look at your screen. So you turn on the screen sharing feature. I just did this yesterday. I was doing some work in Adobe Premiere, and I'm like, this is repetitive and boring. I know that there's got to be a feature. I just don't know what. So I turned on Gemini. I said, watch me work my screen. I turned on the voice interface. I'm in Premiere. I'm doing this. Is there an easy way to do this? And it immediately says, yes. Here's this feature. It's under, press this button on the interface. And I'm like, I wish I'd done this sooner, because I just saved myself hours of time, because it was just watching me work in an app I own and say, you should be doing this instead. So it can be a coach to you and say, here's what you're doing wrong, or here's what you could be doing better.
Wow. And that's in Gemini, you have that feature?
It is.
I have Gemini. Okay. All right. I'll have to go check that out. This is why I love having this conversation with you, because I know that there's so much more out there. And sometimes we marketers, if you're a marketer and listen to this, we forget that there's a whole group of people out there that have heard about AI, but are not using it, don't know what it means, don't know. We are, I think, the tip of the iceberg, using it and diving deep into it. And so I just wanted to have this conversation with you, Chris, to have people get a better understanding, kind of lay of the land, like the overview. You're our deep thinker. That's what we're doing, right? The human DeepSeek that we needed to get people to understand the possibilities of AI. And I absolutely think that you've already given us such great information. Now, I haven't seen any questions come up anywhere. So I have a question for you about, marketing. How do you balance that human interaction, like you and you have a partner, Katie, in your Trust Insights and AI, what part are you not willing to give up on your human sides when you interact with your clients, or when you do you email marketing? Is there anything there that you can share with us that this is where we draw the line, that people can take away from this?
Here's the easy rule of thumb. The tasks that you should hand off to AI immediately are the ones that make you do this. Right? For me, that's expense reports. I love handing off all that crap to AI and say, you do my expense report. I don't want to do it. Here's the thing. AI tools are not compulsory. You do not have to use them for everything. You should test them to see what they're good at. And obviously, anything that gives you a substantial time savings or financial savings or increases your quality, those are obviously strong indicators that you should be using AI for. But they're not compulsory. If there's something that you love to do, keep doing it. Use AI to take time to reclaim time in other spaces so you have more time to do the things you enjoy doing. If you love writing, write. There's no reason to hand that off to AI if you love doing it. If you don't love doing it, hand that off to AI. And again, use it as a review tool. One of the easiest things that you can do as a small business owner is this. Go on a LinkedIn. Find 5 or 8 people that you think would be ideal customers. Like, yeah, if I could just get this person to be a customer. Download their LinkedIn profiles. You can just save as PDF. Drop them into the AI tool of your choice and say, let's make a composite of my ideal customer and all the usual things. And then once you have that, you say, here's my marketing campaign. Here's my email. Here's my blog post. Here's my YouTube video. Here's my whatever. What will my ideal customer think about it? What will they like? What won't they like? What could we do better? How should we rewrite this or tune this or build a different strategy to appeal to these people that we know we want as customers? You have the ability to use real data from real people via their LinkedIn profiles or whatever other data you have to create a synthetic version of those people and then talk to it whenever you want. We built one for ourselves, and we used Google's Vertex to make it into a virtual human in our Slack channel. So now any employee at our company can go into our company Slack and talk to this virtual customer 24/7. Say, what do you think about this blog post? How about this subject line? What do you think about this? What do you think about this week's podcast idea? And it's always there. You don't have to do any fancy prompting. You just talk to it like another person. And that is available to everyone today. Like, you can sign up for a Vertex account. It's pay as you go, and it's like 15 cents per use or so thereabout. So it's not a huge amount of money. And talk to a virtual customer anytime you want. Marketers and businesses have been talking for decades about the voice of the customer, the importance, and it turns out it was all lip service because you have the ability now, and you're still not doing it.
Oh, wow. There's so much here. I don't even want to stop this conversation, but I'm looking at the clock. We're at 28 minutes. So
Chris, here's what you could do. You could say we could end the episode and then just do a bonus edition for the people who are on the live stream.
No, we could. You want to stay on for a little bit?
I will stay on as long as you want me to. I have a hard stop in 2 hours.
Yeah, no. I have a hard stop in 30 minutes. But no, this is great. I know that Hank's here. He's and there's other people here. People are asking conversations. Tama says there's so much conversation regarding negative and positive for AI. Do you think we all need to learn how to use it strategically to get better? Will we be left behind if we don't use it?
This is a very interesting question because it depends on what you mean by left behind. Here's the thing. It does confer a competitive advantage, right? The speed at which you can do things, the level of quality that you with skillful use is better than what most humans can produce, and the number of tasks it can take on is increasing every single day. Our friend, our colleague, Professor Ethan Mollick over at Wharton says today, and this has been universally true, today is the worst version of AI you will ever use. Because it keeps getting better and better and better every day. Yesterday, xAI's Grok 3 came out, which had some state-of-the-art benchmarks. Last week, this DeepSeek was all the things. So there's so much talk. I think you should at least have familiarity with it. You should know what it can and can't do. You should be testing it with your unique situation. You should be learning how the tool works, because in the 2024 Microsoft LinkedIn Work Trend Index, two of the things that stood out from that were 66% of senior leaders at organizations will not hire someone in a leadership role without AI skills, and 71% said they would hire someone more junior with AI skills over someone more senior without AI skills. About a month ago, the World Economic Forum came out and said approximately 29% of tasks done by humans today will be consumed entirely by machines within the next 5 years. So, as much as I don't want to sound like a tech broligarch, saying you must use AI or you're doomed, there is an element of truth to that about having this as a skill, in the same way that social media is a skill and email marketing is a skill. You need to have the skills. You may not use them all the time, but you should have the skill.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think for those of us who are content creators, who are getting paid to create images and graphics and blogs and social media posts potentially, it just means that we can do things faster, maybe get more on point. I love all the tools that you gave us to talk to the customer to make sure that we create the right content, create it faster, better, and then outsource to AI some of the mundane tasks that we don't want to do, and the research and the analysis right afterwards, because that's another thing that I think that we haven't really talked about. But as a marketer, you did say that you outsource expense report, but how about analysis? Do you that's huge, right? We can build these dashboards, but a dashboard is only as good as if you know how to interpret it. But if you then use an AI language model and says, hey, here's some data, here's the analysis, what does it really mean? That's when it gets exciting for me to talk to an AI, right? To say, this is what happened last year, or, what does it mean moving forward to the next year? So for me, that's really, really, really helpful. What do you use it like that, data analysis? I'm assuming you do for a lot of different things, and then making decisions moving forward, correct?
So that's an interesting question. We use it for analysis. We do not use it for data analysis because language models cannot count. They are functionally incapable of it because that's not how their underlying architecture works. It's like trying to cook a steak with a blender, right? It just, no matter how expensive the blender is, it just ain't going to work. So you do have to do some of the data pre-processing. However, once you have that done and it's ready, then it can do the part that's important, which is the communication, the language part. So I can show you an example of this here if you want to bring up my screen share that I put in the chat.
Sure. Here, let me pull it up.
Yep. So what I've done personally is there's an SEO tool called Ahrefs. Ahrefs is is one of the big three: Ahrefs, SEMrush, and Moz. And I have a tool that pre-processes the data, does all the counting in advance, and just makes nice formatted tables. This whole gigantic thing is a prompt, right? That is programmatically generated, and then what a language model will say is, okay, I'm going to spit out the report, so it can read the final version of the data, follow the instructions that it's given, and then create a nice report for the client. And I can say, okay, client, here's your report of what you should do. So it's going through and following the report, what's in the prompt, and saying, here's what you need to know about your SEO. Right. So this exact analysis, and in the prompt, there's a huge amount of stuff of like, here's what I think, my perspective on SEO and how you should think about links and stuff. So it's handling all of that. It's got my unique point of view in it. But it produces a really, really solid report for a client in literally 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. That is, and then it goes to me, the human, to review it, to say, is it actually correct, right? So because again, anything that's high risk, you never want to hand off to someone without at least some eyeballs on it. But that's an example of how you would use these tools. You would say, here's the processed data. Here's the client's objectives. Here is the goals. Here's the client's business. Now, write the report that conveys to the client the three whats. We call them three whats. What happened? So what? Why did it happen? And now what? What are you going to do about it? And these tools are very, very capable of these things. And that's a great use case for these tools that from a data analysis perspective, you can crank out really good insights, including the things that you yourself as a human have forgotten because you're so used to doing it a certain way. You forget that these other angles exist.
Wow. No, I appreciate you showing that to us. And that makes sense. So you take reports that are already done and then you use the language model to write the wording. That is awesome. So is there any other use case that you could see for, say, marketers that you think is like a hidden gem on AI that people aren't really using? I know we've gone through a lot of different things. We haven't really talked much about images. Is there any, you did say you were in Adobe. Were you creating something yesterday?
I was creating some meditation videos for a friend of mine.
Oh.
Which I used AI to do. So what I did was, there's this practice I learned. I was doing some reading about stress, and I downloaded 55 peer-reviewed clinical papers about stress and stress management and stress's impact on executive function. I took all 55 papers, put them in Notebook LM, which is Google's research tool, and said, "Tell me, how to do this, how to manage stress." And then I said, let's take this into regular Gemini and let's create 10 meditation scripts that are based on the clinical findings. So not just making stuff up, but based on actual research. And then I did the voiceover myself and then edited it and sent it off to a friend. So even an example like that, we can use AI to glue together huge amounts of research and data that's proven, that's truthful, and turn it into a useful product.
That's very interesting. Okay, so I have a practical question that there might be simple solution, but I'm hearing you say download 55 peer-reviewed things, and I'm thinking, download 55 things. How do you do that practically? That's not going to take you. There's people out there who are not as technically advanced as you are with knowing how to download things. I mean, even when I teach video creation and video editing, I'm realizing that it's not just getting people to sit in front of a phone and record themselves. It's how do I get it from my phone onto my computer? How do I get it into the program? How do I get it to edit? So a practical AI thing, how do you do that? How do you download 55 things and then put them in AI? Like, it sounds so simple. I'm listening to you going, oh, I can do that. And then I'm like, but practically, is there an easy way to do these things that we don't know about?
So if it's a handful, you do it the way you've always done it, which is you open up the web page, hit download PDF, and there you go. There are tools that exist in both Windows and the Mac environment, which will allow you to mass download a list of URLs. It has nothing to do with AI. These are tools that are 60 years old, right? Like wget, which is a little command line utility on a Mac that will do exactly that. So you have to know that they exist and how to work within that environment. But honestly, it's not a bad idea for you to go one by one, open up 55 web pages and download them, because you want to inspect them to make sure that they're relevant, right? Just because Perplexity or Google, Deep Research or whoever's Deep Research pulls it up doesn't mean it's right or a good fit. So you pull up all 55 pages, look at them and go, well, this paper is not really what I had in mind. Let's maybe not download this one.
All right. That makes sense. It makes me feel a little bit better. I'm like, okay, what am I missing? Because it doesn't sound as quick as it sounded. All right, Chris, I do have to go. But before we go, I want you to let us know how they can find you, where they can find you. Where are you most active on social media? And I am fascinated. I already read your newsletter. I already follow you everywhere. But for somebody who's like, this is the guy I want to learn from, what do you have to offer and where can they find you?
So if you want to work with me in any capacity, go to trustinsights.ai, and then you can find my personal website and newsletter at christopherspenn.com. Those are the two easiest places. I am on most social channels. I'm on LinkedIn, probably that's not true. I'm on Slack and Discord the most, but in terms of being in public, I'm on LinkedIn the most. And we do have a free Slack group called Analytics for Marketers. If you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, you can join the free Slack group there as well. But yeah, start with trustinsights.ai. You can find everything eventually from there.
All right. Awesome. And I'm going to join that Slack group. I was not aware of that. So that's fantastic. people are saying, this is great info. This is wonderful. Christopher, thank you so much. I think this is the longest episode of Strategy Talks. And obviously we were thinking deep, strategic thinkers, about generative AI. I learned so much. I'll be talking all week about generative AI right here on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on YouTube. So watch for more videos coming. I cannot wait to test all of these tools. Thank you so much for being with us today. If you're listening, if you made it all the way to the end, listen to Chris and I talk about generative AI. I appreciate you. Thank you for those of you who had wonderful comments and questions. And I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.
Take care.